Hey friend, Graham here from recordingrevolution.com. Today I'm going to show you how to mix drums in 10 minutes. We are continuing my mixing in 10-minute series where I want to show you my favorite tricks and strategies to quickly get a great sound on different instruments. Today we're talking about drums, and I'm going to show you 3 things I really like to do on drums to get some bang for my buck. And we're going to talk about acoustic drums, like a real live drum kit that was recorded, but the concepts that I'm showing you can apply to drum loops, to sample drums, to anything. It's the same concept. I think it will apply across lots of genres. So this will give you some food for thought. So here is a track where I've got the drums kind of mixing and mixed kind of the way I want them. And then I'll break down the drums and take away some of the things I've done so you can see kind of where they've come from. And I'll walk you through these 3 steps. I'm using nothing but stock plugins for this mix and specifically for the drums as well. So you can do this in any DAW with the plugins you already have.
Nobody else.
There are the drums. If you listen closely, you can actually hear the bass amp bleeding into the drum mics, which is great. The drummer and the bass player played together, and there's a little bit of a drum or bass bleed in there, which is really cool. Oh, the way they used to make records, but it's okay. I'm okay. I'm moving on. So what I want to show you is really what these drums sounded like when I take away the 3 things I did. So I'm going to press play on the drums alone and start to take away the 3 things I did, and then reintroduce them to you and show you how you can implement these and mix your drums in 10 minutes. Okay, that's kind of where we started. So let me get to just right on the downbeat of these drums. Now, there are a couple of EQs going on up at the top here on like the snare drum where I've done some specific, there was some like ring, some snare, ring tone in the snare that wasn't good, and a little bit of tweaking on the toms themselves. But this section of the mix, I'm not even really, you don't even hear any toms. So you're going to have to do specific EQs to your kicks and snares if there's problems or little things you want to enhance. But before I do any of that, I actually try to start on the zoomed out mode on just the drums as a whole. Once you get a good drum balance between the different elements of the drums, what I say you should do is start with a drum bus. So create a track that all your drums are going to go through. Now, if you already have a stereo drum loop, you don't have to do this. That is what it is. But this is taking all these drum tracks, I'm routing their output into this track that I'm calling drums, and then this track goes to the mix bus. And so it's like having your drums on one fader. So when we start there, we can now mute or unmute the drum track, and it will control everything. Muted, unmuted. So the first step I like to do is group them like that, so then I can apply one EQ to the whole drums in one instance. So what I'm going to do is grab this EQ, and this is just the stock EQ here in Pro Tools. And what I've done here is 3 little, and I do mean little, EQ moves. You can go a little more extreme than this. I did it pretty subtly here. I'm doing a little bit of a high pass filter, which is just rolling off the ultra lows. I don't want to do much of this because I don't want to get rid of the low end on the kick drum, of course, but I like to roll off everything below 30 hertz. In this case, I did about 25 hertz. So there's no low rumble. You won't notice a difference sonically, but it will free up some headroom and it will free up some of the better parts of the drums. So that's the one you probably won't hear. Then around 500 hertz, 400 hertz, I find that drums can be a little muddy and boxy. Take a listen to what this sounds like when I boost it so you can hear. Hear how the snare drum sounds like cardboard? It sounds like a chimpanzee hitting like a fake toy drum set. It's just like clunk, clunk. It just doesn't sound good to me. So usually it's around 500 hertz, sometimes 400 hertz. I'll find that on the whole drum group and turn it down by at least 3 dB to clean up some of that fake sounding drum sound. And then I like to do a little bit of a shelf boost. In this case, I did 5K on up. If I'm on like the SSL, EQ, I like to do it at 8K and up because it actually slopes down past 8K if you really read the manual, so it's closer to like a 5K shelf. And I'm just doing a little bit of a boost here. Let's do maybe 3 dB. And what you're going to hear is just how the drums clean up a little bit and have a little bit more presence. So I'll turn them off to start, and then I'll turn on this EQ. Hear how that's so much more clean. And it's the combination of that cut, which cleans it up, and then that little boost really, which brings out the cymbals in a nice crisp way. So start with that kind of simple EQ on a drum group, drum bus, or if you're working on a drum loop, then you just do it on the drum loop itself. That cleans up your drums very quickly. Then I move to parallel compression on the drums, which I've taught here elsewhere a million times over the last 11 years, but it's such a helpful tool where you want to create another drum group or drum track where then I will use sends, if in this case, where I can choose which of the drum microphones to send to this track. And in this case, I'm just sending the kick, and then the 3 snare tracks. There's a top, a bottom, and a snare sample. I'm sending all of them using a pre-fader send. It doesn't have to be pre-fader, but the pre-fader allows you to then listen to this track while everything else is muted and set your compressor the right way, because we're going to do parallel compression. And with the sends, you can turn them down. I like to turn them down similar to where they are in the mix. So like this snare bottom, I like to turn down because it's turned down in the snare mix. But then actually this one, I want to turn up the snare sample a little bit. And then I also am grabbing the overheads. Now I don't always do this. A lot of times I'll just send the kicks and snare tracks to the parallel channel. But you can send the overheads as well. It's just going to compress the overheads and give you a little bit more energy in the cymbals. And if you find that's too much, you can turn it off or turn it down. And then what you do is you send it to this copy here. So I'm just going to be listening to just those tracks on this parallel track here. And by default, they don't sound any different. They're literally just a copy of the kicks and the snares, or in my case, kick, snares, and overhead here. I'm not sending the hi-hat. I'm not sending the room. I'm not sending the shaker. I'm not sending the tambourine. I might send the floor tom and the rack tom, but I haven't done it in this example. But just so you can hear, it's just some of the tracks. And now what we want to do is grab a compressor and compress the snot out of it. So I started with the stock compressor here in Pro Tools. I started with a preset called Pump, thinking that might give me what I wanted. It was close, but what I'm looking for is a slow attack, fast release, really high ratio. So in this case, 10-1. And then you just try to get this thing pumping. So listen to what happens to the drums when I turn this on. Right? It's crushed. You lose all the dynamics, so it doesn't sound musical, but you get elongated room sound because the overheads are getting crushed and compressed, and then you're getting a lot more smack and weight on the kick and the snare. And the goal is to have that sound and blend it in parallel with the natural sounding drums, right? So what I'm going to do is turn this fader down and just go back to the normal drums. And then I'm going to slowly fade up the parallel track so that I start to notice the weight and energy that this fader is bringing while still maintaining the natural drum sound here. Now I'm going to mute this parallel track so you can hear what happens when we take it away. way more smack, way more energy, which is really helpful and important in the mix because it allows the energy of the drums to not disappear when you bring in the whole band. So that's the second step. That's what I love to do really quickly. And there's a lot of control if you use sends to a parallel track where you can really say, the kick drum is too loud in that parallel mix and it's triggering the compressor too much. So we can turn the kick drum down and the send or the snare drum down or whatever, or you could get rid of the overhead. So a lot of control there to fine tune the sound. So now we've taken the drums really far. And the third thing that I love to do is a little bit of room reverb. I usually hate reverb, and it's just me. I know I've got problems. Me and reverb just don't get along very well, but I do like a room reverb on drums. And so in Pro Tools, there's a great stock reverb called the Air Reverb that has a great preset called Drum Room. So I always start with that, and then I will cut the high end frequencies down a little bit. I'll roll off some of the high end because a little bit of it sounds a little too digitally and fake. But what this is just look for a short room or a small room. Room reverb is different than hall. It's different than a church. It's different than a plate. It has that room sound. And so if you can darken it a little bit, either with a high frequency cut on the reverb or literally put an EQ right after this reverb plugin and roll off some of the top end so you get a more warmer, rounder sounding room reverb. This can be great. And all I've done is I've taken the drum group, which is where all the drums are going through, and used one send on the drum group and sent a little bit of the drums to this room track here where the room reverb is at so that I can add a little bit of room reverb. So let me press play with the room muted, and then I will turn the room reverb on, and you can hear the difference it makes. More energy and stereo width, like the kick drum gets stereo width because now it's, even though a mono track or up the middle track, you now hear a little bit of that decay in the left and the right on the kick drum. It's a nice subtle touch that puts the drums in a room. If you've been following along, we've made some drastic changes really quickly, but if I take away the room reverb, the parallel compression, and the one EQ on the drum track, you can hear how far we've taken these drums. I'll do them all one at a time. And now what I'll do is just press play one last time and turn all three on at the same time so you can hear the difference. There you go. Those are some of my favorite moves to mix your drums in just 10 minutes. Now, before you go, I want to give you something cool. I actually want to give you these tracks that I'm working on right here. This is a cool song called Sojourner, and it's a fun song by the Lack family. And I want to give you the multi-track stems to it. They've been gracious to allow us to give these tracks to you to practice on. So if you just click the link below this video or go to mixingchecklist.com, I'm going to give you these stems to practice on and my mixing checklist, which is an 8-step mixing process. This is a simple PDF you can read. I recommend you just print it out and keep it at your mixing station as sort of like a template or a resource. But literally, this is my mixing process. What I do first, second, third, or fourth, so that you can have a system to follow when you mix. That'll make your mixes more consistent, give you more confidence, and help you mix, I think, faster as well. So download the mixing checklist for free and the multi-track stems to this song. And there's a couple other bonus goodies that you'll get when you download that at mixingchecklist.com. Just as my gift to you for watching these videos, supporting this channel, it means a ton. And then leave me a comment below. Let me know what's your favorite drum mixing technique or drum mixing plugin or drum mixing strategy that you're using on your mixes. Leave a comment. Let us know. There are so many cool things you can do to drums to get a good sound quickly. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It means a ton. Hope you're staying healthy and safe, and I'll see you on another video real soon.